Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident fanalist, as always, Ryan Schlip. Check us out online, packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, pack_data. Well, today is what has become known as PFF Day. It's kind of expanded a little bit into other things, but before we get there, allow me to rant on exactly what I ranted on yesterday, because I think it's worth talking about. So, I think from a, what do they call it, 32,000 foot view, is that what the number is? I don't know. From way up there, the talking points can kind of be, actually, it's the opposite. I'm trying to come at it from the 32,000 point view. Frickin' who cares? I can't do this. No, I think sometimes we're a little too zoomed in, especially, again, the national media perspective on things or whatever. We pick certain narratives and we run with it, and independently, it's true. And one of the things is Sam Darnold. Semi-true, right? I mean, what the heck? Sam Darnold is better than we thought, the whole thing, everything, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I have my perspective, and that is, to just blanket make a statement about Sam Darnold that the guy is one of the best in the NFL right now, and watch out for the Vikings, etc. I'm a little bit iffy on that. I've already come around to the fact that I was dead wrong in the offseason. Okay, let's just flat out leave that where it is. I'm not trying to redeem anything about that. I'm trying to look forward from where we are. And I've already been talking to you about the fact that Darnold had his one really good game. This is PFF grade. You take it or leave it. But it's the point is there's a picture that PFF has painted about Darnold that correlates to reality. And that picture is he doesn't do very well. That doesn't mean every single game. Some games he's amazing. But overall, throughout the course of the season, when you tally it all up, he had a bad season. And that's the story of Sam Darnold's career. And so he had his first game. It was basically elite. And I said, look, it's interesting that the guy blew everybody out of the water after 1 week. And although he's had 2 or 3 of these in different seasons where he's done this well via the grade, it's not unusual. It's startling that it's week 1 under this new regime, reputable head coach, and he already did this. The next week, though, he immediately fell off, 69.5. Again, not bad, but kind of like on the high end of his general range, and he had another 74, and it's like, okay, well, if he can maintain the 70s, he's just going to have a great year. But I still was skeptical that he was going to be able to do that. Goes up against Green Bay, and again, the general consensus is, dang, look at Darnold. He's doing it. He's staying ahead of the pack. The problem is PFF, again, on you talk about watch the tape, you talk about context, you talk about all that. Again, I don't want to go down the whole diatribe again, but this is ultimate context. Sometimes they make decisions about context that we would disagree with, and so we're skeptical about their ability to evaluate things contextually. But if you want full context as opposed to these blocky statistics that tell you a thing but don't really give you a clear picture, the grades say he was awful. So he went from an 88 to a 69 to a 73 to a 45. Is what his PFF grade was in this game. You say, how the heck is that possible? Well, I don't exactly know, to be honest. There are certain indications, but he's had similar games before, and he didn't grade out that well. Same reason I can't explain how he got a 90 in week 1. It was 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Who frickin' cares? But again, on a play-to-play basis, they gave him a 90 in that game. And in this game, 45. Now, he had a 71% completion rate, 76.9 adjusted completion percentage. So it was not his accuracy. 275 yards is not blowing the barn doors off anything, but it's certainly not bad, especially on just 20 completions, 28 attempts. That's 9.8 yards per attempt. He had 3 touchdowns compared to 1 interception, which is not terrible. Now, the first indication of something being bad, this is not just a Darnold thing. We're going to get into a bigger picture, but I just want to be clear, set the groundwork for something very clearly. He had 1 big-time throw and 3 turnover-worthy plays. That's not very good. To be clear, he came into this over 3 weeks only having 2 turnover-worthy plays. He had 0 in week 1, then 1, then 1, then 3. He came into this game with 4 big-time throws. He had 1 in this game. Nothing super crazy, but it was 2, 2, 0, and then 1. So, he starts off with 2 and then it's 2 again. He hasn't gotten back to 2 in his last 2 weeks. So there's a drift there, because again, completion percentage is great and all that, but contextually, what's going on? Are these easy passes? Are they wide open guys? Is there pressure? Is there whatever? These things tend to matter. Now, again, passer rating 123.4. You can't argue anything production related is going to say Sam Darnold had a good day because based on production, he did. That's why, for pretty much any of these, especially volatile quarterbacks like Jordan, you'll look at some stats, he was amazing. You look at others, he was dog crap, right? It just depends. Now, I'm not going to really try to dig in and try to figure it out. That's not really the point. The point is, what I think is it's a very weird season. And I feel like I say that every year, but I also feel like every year it gets more weird. Either that or it's the same amount of weird. I just kind of forget how weird things are, and then we get back to it. I think that we're seeing a lot of volatility in the NFL. There was a question prior to this week that I saw somebody pose. I had somebody call in and ask about it. I wanted to dig into it, and I feel like I might have missed my window because the question was, are we returning back to the old school football of run the ball first to kind of counter the way NFL teams are moving or whatever? And I have not looked into it. As unusual as that would be, it seemed plausible. But I remember looking, and again, this may not have held up, but they go through all the games and they're like highest passing, whatever, and Jordan's at the top with almost 400 passing yards, which, again, I'm not doing backflips over it. Same reason I didn't give Caleb a lot of credit. When you throw the ball over 50 times, you're going to end up with a lot of statistics. Yards, whatever, touchdowns, picks, unfortunately. But that it scrolled around to rushing yards, and at the time, the top 2 rushers had about, I think the top guy had like 104 yards. It was not a big week for running the ball. And so we're starting to see some normalization. The Chiefs still haven't quite figured it out, but they continue to win. It's what they do. They're still weird. Like Pat Mahomes is not playing good football, et cetera, et cetera. The 49ers are getting back to being what the 49ers were. There's still going to be a period, which we clearly have not come out of yet, of it's a very cloudy, murky picture, and people are starting to emerge. Now, the Vikings have put themselves in a 4-0 position, so even if they start to dip, they're probably in a solid position by the end of the year anyways, unless it's a complete tank from this point on. But, of course, they've got some games that are, obviously very winnable, even if you're not the greatest team in football. But I feel like that's what we're seeing. And one of the things, and again, I talked about it yesterday, I just want to give you this perspective on things. So the top 10 quarterbacks right now are Derek Carr, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Jaden Daniels, Andy Dalton, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray, and Baker Mayfield. Now, this is very different than the list I read yesterday because I think that was EPA per play or something like that. This is a different perspective. But just look at that list. And some of them you go, well, yeah. I mean, you got names that you recognize in there. First of all, Jaden will accept because he's a rookie and we'll just say he's elite, which, by the way, that dude is out of control. His completion percentage rate right now is like historic. He's at 82.1% for his career as a rookie right now. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that he's had like no drops, but still, that's a very high number. But then, Josh Allen, he's in there. Lamar, Rodgers, will even accept Kyler, I suppose. But notice I didn't say Burrow. I didn't say Mahomes. I didn't say Stroud. Love is not in the mix. Tua, obviously he's out now, but he's not in the mix. Dak, who was like number 1 last year, not there. Kirk Cousins, not there. Trevor Lawrence, not there. Matt Stafford is not there. Jalen Hurts is not there. Justin Herbert is not. There's a lot of names that you would expect to be there that are not there, along with, how is Derek Carr the number 1 quarterback in football? Is it because Derek Carr is really that good? Is that it? We're talking about Darnold. What about Carr? He had one rough game against Philadelphia. Here are his other 3 games. Carolina, 88 PFF grade. Dallas, 91. Atlanta, 85. He's going on a historically elite run right now. Why? I don't freaking know. Geno was decent. He wasn't the 3rd best quarterback in football. Andy freaking Dalton? Really? Baker? I mean, he's kind of one of those like 10 to 15 type of guys, and he's 10, so maybe it's not that crazy. But again, that's just the half of it. Jordan Love, again, there's reasons for it, but he's at a 68 PFF grade. That's not where we thought he would be. Tua, before he went out, had a 66 grade. Dak is at a 66. He ranks 24th. Trevor Lawrence is 29th with a 62. Stafford is 31st with a 60, 59 passing. Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia quarterback, 57 grade, 51 passing. He's 34th. This is out of like 47 quarterbacks. Let me get rid of some of these other guys that don't belong in here. Out of 35 now, Jalen Hurts is 26 out of 35. But we're not done. Herbert, 27th out of 35. He's one of the worst quarterbacks in football right now, 55 grade. Jacoby Brissett, not super surprising. Bo Nix, Anthony Richardson, Jared Goff. He was one of the best quarterbacks in football last year. He's one of the worst right now, 30th out of 35. Just ahead of Caleb Williams. I mean, that's crazy. Now, granted, he had a good week last week. We'll see what he does. I still haven't watched the game yet, but good week against Arizona. Just trash his first 2 weeks. But again, do we think Goff's going to stay there? I don't. Do you think maybe he's going to bounce back from those 2 bad games? He went from a 43 to a 49 to a 74. Do you think we're going to see more of that? I do. And I think that's going to lead to the Lions going from like, they're pretty good to, yeah, this is the team we thought that was going to be one of the top NFC teams. Jared Goff is not going to end the season with a 50 PFF grade. He's just not. I mean, he could, but he's not. And that's just quarterbacks. There's a lot of weird things going on. A lot of teams have not figured things out. But I think things are going to start sorting themselves out. And that is a big part of the reason why when I see the way that game ended for the Packers, I do feel good, because that is what you expect from a team that has Jordan Love and the wide receivers that we have and the running backs that we have and the offensive line that we have, and the defense that started getting a bunch of stops down, in the second half. That's what you expect. And when you see it click, you go, okay, that team is going to be a good football team. Anyways, wanted to get that off my chest. Let's take a little bit of an early break, and then we'll dive into the grades, which are not as bad as you might expect. We got to have a conversation about a couple defensive players, but otherwise, really not as I was expecting to see like one good player, and like everybody else is in like the 20s. Like I just was really expecting some horrible things. But we'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, let us get started. I tell you what, I didn't do this last week. I'm going to do it this time. We'll kind of double back and do the position by position thing, but I just want to go through overall kind of big picture look at the PFF grades. So offense, I was really surprised. There was really only one bad grade, and I'm not even super mad about it. It was Luke Musgrave. And I know a lot of people are Luke Musgrave skeptics, and you hear that and you roll your eyes. And it's not good. But really, the only reason he graded as poorly as he did is because he had a 17 pass blocking grade. Now, that's inexcusable no matter what. But again, it's like Wyatt can't run block or do run defense or whatever, which I think this is even less significant because we don't even really need him to do this very often. He shouldn't be doing it at all. In fact, he really didn't. It was one snap where he just must have sucked completely. Nobody else was below a 55, which is kind of my cutoff. I mean, remember, 60 is dead average. 55 is technically below average, but whatever. The guys that did fall under 60, there really weren't a ton of them. Ben Sims, he played 2 snaps. Malik Heath, don't expect a ton. Romeo Doubs, a little disappointing, but I think he had an overall good day. He just made some mistakes, which is understandable. Watson, 55 by 56, basically. He played 9 snaps. Tucker Kraft is really surprising. I think it's his run blocking. He had a 49 run blocking grade. But they gave him a 58 receiving grade. So I think, you know what? He had that bad fumble. He had probably a couple other things. The touchdown was good, though. And then the one that's maybe a little surprising is Elton Jenkins. However, it was a 46 run blocking grade and 81 pass blocking grade. That's pretty subpar for him for run blocking, or anybody for run blocking. But again, I'll give a guy a pass if he's got an 81 grade. And then on the positive side, I'll tell you what, I'm just going to give it to Jordan Love. He had a 69 PFF grade. We're going to round that up to a 70 and say, you know what, he had a good day. Emmanuel Wilson, 72. Rasheed Walker, back in everybody's good graces. And again, same dude as always. This time he didn't have the penalties. Below average run blocking, 81.6 pass blocking. As far as I'm concerned, this guy is an all-pro. And it's all I ever wanted from my left tackle. And then, of course, Jaden Reed was the second highest because the guy is just nonstop, 75.7. And then actually a little surprising because I'm pretty sure I saw him give up a quick sack. I thought this would be his first bad day. Zach Tom with a 90 PFF grade. In fact, the interesting thing, it was only an 80 pass blocking grade only for Zach Tom. How dare you? And a 93 run blocking grade. I mean, this guy is out of control. Let's just look at him real quick because there's not a lot of offensive line stats. So far on the season, 85 overall, 85 pass blocking, and 85 run blocking. That's what he is right now. We've never really had, I don't think we've ever had an offensive lineman quite like this. Bakhtiari was probably a better pass blocker. He was up in the 90s. I don't think he was as good of he was a decent run blocker, but he was like 70s. So he was an awesome like 90, 70 guy. I don't think we've ever had a guy that's like 85, 85 in both. I mean, if we did, it was a long time ago, back before we were doing all the PFF stuff. In fact, I'm kind of curious. Never mind. We won't do that today. It'll be another day. But guys like Sitton or whatever, maybe we're kind of in that range. And then defensively is where it starts to get a little bit ugly. In fact, it's a lot of bit ugly. There are two bright spots. Evan Williams, 81. Love to see it. He only played 10 snaps, but it's good to see him up there. And, of course, Xavier McKinney with a 91. We came into this season with Xavier McKinney being a big free agent acquisition. I said, I think we're underhyping this guy. He was, I think, the number one safety in football last year with an 88 PFF grade. He currently has an 89. He had a 91 coverage grade last year. He has a 90 coverage grade this year. Most interceptions he's ever had in a season is 5. He already has 4. So this dude is absolutely out of control. That's the positive. Nobody else even hit a 70. Below a 55, Corey Ballantyne, not surprising, 49. Eric Stokes, unfortunately, I was hoping maybe there'd be some context that we missed, that he had a couple good snaps. 43 with a 36 coverage grade. That's massively disappointing. I mean, this is sort of his year to prove something. It's kind of like A.J. Dillon last year, which he failed that test. It was kind of, we haven't really, rookie year was okay, second year was hurt. Now we need to see if you can play, and that's not what we want to see. At 14, Eric Wilson with a 41, Edgerrin Cooper with a 41. Edgerrin, I'm a little bit more concerned about. I like him, he's fast, he does cool stuff, but I think if we're paying attention, he started off with an 86 grade, then it was 57, 65, and 41. And this is the first time he had like a decent chunk of snaps, and it was pretty ugly. So they're putting more on his plate, and it's not super panning out. But I still like him. He's still a wild child out there. We'll give him some time. Devontae Wyatt had a 40 grade, which is not what we needed. I hate to talk ill because, again, I think it's pretty serious, whatever he's dealing with. I'll check around a little bit. We'll do an injury update. But, you need a guy. I know he's not great at run defense, but he had 0 pressures. 49 pass rush grade. He was just having a bad day on a day when we needed our interior guys up against their bad interior offensive line to step up. Our biggest pass rusher on the inside just had a bad day. Kingsley Enagbare with a 39. Again, don't need that. And then another guy on the inside, TJ Slayton, with a 34. With a 30 run defense grade. Again, he's always been a better pass rusher. In fact, I cannot believe this. He had 3 pressures on 12 attempts. How does that happen? I don't know. I don't understand, but the rest were all kind of in the middle. So, all right, let's double back. I just wanted to make sure that we got all that. Let's go quarterback now. Jordan Love, again, I expected him to be like in the 30s or something. I mean, it was so ugly in the beginning. I thought they were just going to massively dock him. They didn't. So why don't we start off with this? Jordan Love did lead the league this week in passing yards. Again, take it for what it's worth. It's the same as Josh Jacobs leading the league in rushing yards. When he had, 30 some odd carries or 40, 50, whatever it was, something stupid. But yeah, 389 yards. He also led the league in touchdowns with 4. Sam Darnold was second with 3. Nobody else had 3 or 4. So that's actually a decent achievement. Unfortunately, Jordan also led the league in interceptions. Nobody had more than 1 except him, where he had 3. CPOE, as expected, was not super great. A lot of inaccurate passes, but not as bad as I thought. I think I mentioned this on the game day. He's at negative 4.5. I think he, in week 1, was like negative 13. The lowest was Bo Nix at -19, just for context. In fact, I pulled up this like popular chart that compares EPA per play to completion percentage over expected. You can do any XY thing that you want, but again, it's not as bad as I would have thought. He's pretty much right smack dab in the middle. He's a little lower than average on both, but he's right there with Matt Stafford and Kyler Murray right in the middle. Of course, you have Sam Darnold at the far end with Prescott and Caleb Williams. I mean, it's a disaster. Actually, Jaden Daniels is off the chart. You can barely see him. But anyways, yeah, he's pretty much right in the middle of the whole thing. EPA per dropback is pretty bad. He ranked 22nd, -0.24. Per dropback is better because when you multiply that out by each dropback, his total EPA was, wasn't it 24th before? It was 24th. Only Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Jacoby Brissett, and Bo Nix were worse. Again, what friggin' world are we living in here? Other guys that were negative: Pat Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford, Kyler Murray, and Josh Allen. Josh Allen actually was the closest to Jordan Love. He was negative 13.1 total EPA. So, again, not a good day, but not a good day for a lot of people, which is really weird. Also, for further context, like Sam Darnold was good at 4.2, but not quite as good as Daniel Jones. So, freaking, I don't know what's going on. Pressure rate. Jordan Love was 10th most, which is a lot for the Packers, but again, it contextually could have been a lot worse. Mahomes, Minshew, Watson, Herbert, Josh Allen, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Caleb Williams, and Jacoby Brissett. By the way, again, I love making fun of Caleb, and I hope he's terrible, but the guy was under pressure 50% of his snaps and had a 106.6 passer rating, completing 74% of his passes and a plus 10.9 CPOE. A pretty good day at the office, even if it was only 23 attempts. I like making fun of him, but you got to call it like you see it. It was a good day. Blitz rate was actually really high. I think that was kind of expected because it's Minnesota. I did say that that's probably going to dial down once Jordan Love gets in there, but it wouldn't be against Minnesota because they blitz a lot. He was blitzed 46.4% of the time, which again, you still got to give some flowers to the offensive line. They give up the 10th most pressures, but were blitzed the 4th most. So, kind of that gap there where you're pressured less than you're blitzed. As, relating to the rest of the NFL, I think is a credit to the offensive line. Average separation of the receivers, Jordan Love ranks 4th, which is a great testament to the wide receivers being open. On average, the receivers are open by 4 yards. Only Carr with the Saints, Minshew with the Raiders, and Lamar Jackson with the Ravens were more. Flipping over to PFF, 1 big-time throw, 3 turnover-worthy plays. His average depth of target was about 11 yards, 70% adjusted completion percentage, which is actually really good. I remember the announcer saying he's well below 50% at one point in the game, and then the second half rolled around, and he was ended the game at about 60%. And again, with all the drops, I think they said 3, 8.6% drop rate, it goes up to a 70%. When you look at 1 batted pass, 1 hit as he threw, 2 throwaways, and 3 drops. Jordan under pressure, all things considered, play really well. In fact, he graded out higher under pressure than when kept clean. So the problem is when he was kept clean, he was 25 of 35, 3 touchdowns and a pick, 296 yards, but 65 grade. That's where you expect to be a little better. 2 turnover-worthy plays, 0 big-time throws. Under pressure, though, he was 7 of 19, 93 yards, a touchdown, 2 picks, but there was 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play. So again, you look at the raw numbers of the picks. I like turnover-worthy play because the interception, the difference between interceptions and turnover-worthy plays is whether or not somebody made a play on the ball, which is irrelevant to the quarterback. The question is, how many times did you throw a ball that really should have been intercepted? The reality is there were 2 when he was kept clean. There was only 1 when he was under pressure. So they had 2 opportunities in Minnesota, only capitalized on 1, whereas in the other instance, he only really threw 1 bad ball, but probably that tip ball by Musgrave kind of caused a situation. And again, you could call that turnover-worthy if you want. I'm guessing that's what they decided wasn't. So for an under-pressure grade, that's really good. For a kept-clean grade, that's not very good. Looking at the wide receivers compared to the rest of the league, first of all, Jaden Reed once again is near the top in yards, 139 yards and a touchdown. He has been phenomenal throughout this entire season. Only Nico Collins passed him with 151. Both of them just had a touchdown. Only the only guy to get 2 touchdowns was Dontavian Wicks. So Packers receivers letting their presence be known. If you look at yards per reception, Jaden Reed is 9th. Catch rate over expected. Don't see any Packers near the top. Malik Heath would be 18th, would be the highest. Makes sense. There was a lot of drop issues compared to like miraculous catches. Reception EPA, in other words, how impactful were your receptions? How much did they mean to your game and how many points you scored? Jaden Reed was second only to Josh Downs. So his EPA was 10.1 for his receptions. So it's sort of like points added to the game is sort of what we're talking about. Not really, but kind of. Even if you break it down into EPA per target, he's still 10th. So Jaden Reed just refusing to drop out of the top 10 wide receiver conversation, which is fantastic. I mean, it really is. As much as you look at it, it's like, oh, man, I was hoping he'd be there. I mean, to think that, again, we got a big stable of guys. And my whole thing coming into this season was, if we could have like 3 top 50s and maybe 2 top 32s and maybe like a top 15-ish, like that's a great group. I don't know how we're going to end up, but Jaden Reed is battling inside of the top 10 as a wide receiver right now. And I don't say that flippantly because battling inside of the top 10 of wide receivers is big. There are so many good wide receivers. Air yards per attempt, Dontavian Wicks cracks the top 10. He is 8th. Same with deep percentage. He's 7th, so he's kind of a deep shot guy, I guess. But if we just kind of look at the Packers wide receivers, catch percentage, Musgrave, Malik were 100%, Jaden 87, Josh Jacobs 67, Tucker 67, Romeo Doubs 43, so that contributes to his grade and whatnot. Only catching 43% of your targets is not good. And then, of course, Dontavian Wicks, 38.5. I kind of gave Romeo a pass because some of those catches were miraculous. Some of those were tough to catch. He probably had a couple that I'm blanking on in my head that should have been caught. Obviously, the interception, you would have hoped that it's not easy when there's a tip ball and you're trying to reach backwards and catch it, but you would have hoped he caught that. Whatever. Catch rate over expected. Wicks was the worst. He caught 21.2% less than he should have. Romeo 11.1. Tucker -4. Josh Jacobs -1.4. And then on the positive end, Jaden Reed 14.8% higher. Musgrave 15% higher. And Malik Heath 17.4% higher. Total receiving EPA, Jaden Reed, as I said, was 10.1. And then it plummets down to 0.7 for Malik Heath. 0.1 for Musgrave. -0.2 for Jacobs, -2.8 for Tucker. That I'm assuming is that fumble contributed a lot to that. Dontavian Wicks -6.7 and Romeo -8.7. So Romeo is a little bit more devastating than I remember it being, but those two guys really set us backwards. We only had Jaden dragging this thing and really at a high level. Again, 10.1 total EPA is a lot, but we got two guys totaling like -15 in Wicks and Romeo. Yards after the catch over expected. Musgrave was -5. Kind of disappointing for him. I mean, he's got some speed. He needs to start making some plays after the catch. Again, I would love it if we could start stressing him down the field, start taking some shots with him. That's his wheelhouse. But if we're going to throw you these dump-off passes, try to like take the corner or something, and then hit a guy. Try to get a couple extra. The fact that a tight end is getting 5 yards less than expected kind of sucks. Malik Heath -4, Romeo -1, Tucker +1, Jaden +8, and then Wicks and Jacobs +9. And then average separation, Tucker Craft 5.6. That's pretty impressive. Granted, he's usually sitting in the flat with nobody there, but still. Malik 5.3, Jacobs 4.9, kind of the same for running backs. Luke 4.5, then Jaden 4.1. That dude is open a lot. And, part of that may have to do with the scheme. You send Christian down, you send all these people, and you create that space. And who do you fill that with? You fill it with Reed. Probably could do that with Wicks or whoever, but he's been that guy, and he's finding the space. And, man, he's always a lot of space around him. Wicks 3.9, again, another good route runner. Romeo Doubs 1.5. I don't expect as much separation from him, but he's definitely more of a go-up-and-get-it guy, and I think that's where he faltered is – that's his wheelhouse, and he didn't quite come through. Again, a lot of these passes were not easy. Jordan didn't make it easy on you, but that's one of those things where you need a guy like Romeo to dig those passes out. You know what I mean? All right, kicking it over to PFF. As far as the receiving grades, there were two good ones, Jaden Reed and Josh Jacobs. Bo, Dentavian were in the 60s. Tucker, Malik, Christian, Romeo, all high 50s, and then Luke was a 53. Nothing terrible, not a lot great, too good. What else is interesting here? We can check the slot again. Jaden Reed, 85%, then Watson, 40. Remember, they were putting Wicks in there a lot, but he dropped quite a bit. So they were playing around with Watson in the slot, at least, for the little bit that he played, unfortunately. Yards per route run, one of my favorite stats for wide receivers. Bo Melton, 4.67. As much as I feel like talking trash about Bo, I don't know why. I think it's just because he's like taking Christian's spot, and it just annoys me because I want Christian to be in there. But Bo Melton, man, people loved him last year. I was a little bit more skeptical. Still hasn't, really risen to the occasion, but the guy ran 6 total routes and caught one pass for 28 yards. That's 4.67 per route run. Jaden Reed, 3.09, insane. Like I've said before, I don't have an exact number. I got to kind of narrow it down a little bit, but anything over 2, I feel pretty good about. Malik Heath was right at 2. Then Wicks, 1.7, Tucker, 1.1, Josh Jacobs, 1.08, Luke Musgrave, 0.81, Romeo, 0.76, and Watson, 0.00. Longest reception on the day, Jaden Reed, 42 yards. Is there nothing this man can't do? Rushing, again, we didn't do it a ton, so you don't expect to see too much. However, if you look at yards per carry, Josh Jacobs was 11th, so knocking on the door, 5.7 yards per carry. Surprisingly, his rush EPA ranked 14th at 1.1. So, again, that's a cumulative thing. With him not getting a lot of opportunities, I think it really speaks volumes to the value he provides, even with very little opportunities. Guys with 10-plus carries of 10 or more yards, again, with only 9 attempts, he still had 2 carries over 10 yards, which is tied for 9th. If you look at inside run percentage, he is 4th highest, which I really feel like we're starting to hammer that. I mean, Aaron Jones ran up the middle quite a bit, but I just don't see Josh Jacobs stretching to the outside as much as I feel like we saw when it was Aaron Jones. And they're having some success. 78% of the time they're running that. He was 12th in success percentage, 55.6%. All right. Let's get to the individual stuff. We've only got the 2 guys, so that's really all we're comparing to. But if you look at yards compared to expected rush yards, really no difference whatsoever. Emmanuel Wilson got 2 additional yards. Josh Jacobs was, 2 additional yards, I guess, so pretty much right at average. Success rate, though, Josh Jacobs was 55.6%, Emmanuel Wilson just 12.5%. So running with Wilson, again, that 1 carry got taken back by penalty, really frustrating, but still didn't work quite as well with Emmanuel Wilson today. Stacked percentage, how often did they see a stacked box? 0 times. Not 1 time did they see it. Now, that might be just a factor with the style of defense that they play in Minnesota, or it might just be that there's going to be less stacked boxes when you're playing with Jordan Love. It's just the bottom line. Even if he's having a bad day, I don't know that they'd have to change on the fly. They came into this game saying we're not doing that. We're not going to load up the box and try to stop the run if Jordan Love's the quarterback. So, again, hopefully we don't get in a 28-point hole and we allow ourselves to use Josh Jacobs a little bit. That would be nice because I think we'll find some success there. But flipping over to PFF, Emmanuel Wilson actually was given a higher rushing grade, 76, Josh Jacobs 64, Jordan Love 64, Jaden Reed 56. Let's see, yards after contact per attempt, Jordan Love 8, Josh Jacobs 3.3, the guy's a moose. Emmanuel Wilson 2.13, Jaden Reed 1. Missed tackles forced, 1 each for Love, Wilson, and Jacobs. Longest rush was Jacobs for 13 yards. Carries over 10 yards, Jacobs had 2, nobody else did. And I think that's about it. All right. Final thing here. The old offensive line. And again, I don't think I've got much on that, but PFF has got us covered. As I said, left tackle is first up. Rasheed Walker, as far as I'm concerned, massive step forward today. His run blocking grade was essentially a 60. We'll call that dead average. Pass blocking was like an 82, which is incredible. And no penalties. Now, he did give up 4 hurries, which isn't great. I don't know the story behind that or how he ended up with such a high grade, but I will take it. A lot of pressures actually given up in this game. The Packers usually give up almost none, but there were several, 15 actually in total. Although, again, Jordan was passing a lot more, so a lot more attempts, a lot more pressures, etc. Left guard Elton Jenkins, as we said, run blocking was pretty unacceptable at a 46.6, but he didn't do it very often. The guy had to pass block 58 times and came up with an 81 pass blocking grade. That's incredible. Josh Myers also, as far as what my expectations are for Josh Myers and, me crossing my fingers that we could still have a starter here, I think he's done that recently. 73 pass blocking, 58 run blocking. I mean, that's Josh Myers to me. That just says that's my guy right there. Right guard Sean Rhyan, also a pretty good day. Very similar. He's kind of falling in line with what Packers interior guys do. 78 pass blocking, 56 run blocking. Do I wish it was on the other side of 60? I do. Will I get over it? I will. And then right tackle, as I said, Zach Tom, just an absolute phenom. 93 run blocking grade, 78 pass blocking grade. He's ending up as one of the best run blocking offensive linemen I think we've ever had. That's the second time now. He had a 93 run blocking grade. It's his second highest run blocking grade in these 4 games. He had a 93.2 week 1 against Philly. Guy's ridiculous. As far as pressures, though, again, a lot of attempts, so there's more pressures, but here's where the blame goes. Rashid gave up 4. Josh Myers gave up 4. That's too many for an interior guy. Sean Rhyan, 2. Zach Tom, 2. Luke Musgrave, 1. Josh Jacobs, 1. Elton Jenkins, 1. As far as sacks, apparently 0 given up. I don't know. Did Jordan not get sacked in the game? It's either that or it's another one of those weird things where they're just not blaming anybody, maybe blaming Jordan. Let me just look real quick. No, they did have 1, which even that, I will say, is a pretty good day at the office, especially for one of the best pass rush teams in the NFL to have nearly 60 opportunities and only get 1 sack out of it. It's pretty good. But all right, let's take a little break. We'll come back and take a look at the defense. All right, so I already went over the grades. Let me go through the grades a little bit more, in detail here. Run defense, Carl Brooks and Kenny Clark actually stepped. By the way, 2 potential positives if we're, handing out consolation prizes. Kenny Clark had a 66 grade, and Quay Walker had a 68. You could even go so far as to say they were the 3rd and 5th highest graded if you really want to get crazy with how much praise to dump on them, but for expecting these guys to climb out of the gutter, that's a pretty good step in the right direction. But anyways, Kenny with a 71 run defense day, which is solid, along with Carl Brooks. Xavier McKinney, 68. Eric Stokes, 68. A lot of averages on the bad side. Corey Ballantyne and TJ Slayton. TJ Slayton, that's unacceptable for a big dude up the middle. Corey Ballantyne, though, friggin' whatever. Pass rush, Keyshawn Nixon given a 94 grade. Nobody else really given anything of substance aside from Wyatt, Brooks, and Inigbare down in the 40s. Again, for Wyatt, I don't like that. Inigbare and Carl Brooks also, but whatever. Just got to be better at pass rush, dude. I don't fully understand what the heck is going on. Coverage, really bad. Eric Wilson, 29. Eric Stokes, 35. Keyshawn Nixon, 44. They got frickin' rocked. Edgerrin Cooper with a 54. Corey Ballantyne with a 54. Bullard with a 54. And then on the positive side, Williams, 71. Quay Walker, 71. McDuffie, 73. And Xavier McKinney with a 90. Pressure statistics, this is via PFF. Again, it may be different than what NFL has. Slayton, 3 pressures on 12 attempts. He led the team in pressures. I don't understand, but great day for him. 2 pressures on 12 attempts is solid for Kingsley. 2 on 16 is pretty good for Carl Brooks. 2 attempts on 28 for Kenny is not great. Javon Bullard, 1 attempt, 1 pressure. I'll take it. Lucas Van Ness, 1 on 13, slightly below average. 1 on 6, 1 on 1, 1 on 1, blah, blah, blah. Devontae Wyatt, 18 attempts, 0 pressures. Rashawn Gary, 22 attempts, 0 pressures. I mean, bro, I don't know, man. And Preston Smith, 19 attempts, 0 pressures. I mean, that's awful. It's not okay. To have that many cumulative pressures across this team and to come up with 14 pressures. There were 2 sacks, Keyshawn and Quay, which is also an indictment. Where are the pressures coming from? Where are the sacks coming from? Is it from the guys that get paid to do it, or is it from Hafley bringing extra guys? Is it from Hafley bringing Quay? Is it from Hafley bringing Keyshawn? I mean, it shouldn't have to be this much work. Both sacks came from non-pass rushers. McKinney, Keyshawn, Quay, Bullard, these guys all accounted for, 4 of the 14, so only 10 pressures and 0 sacks. From Slayton, Inigbare, Brooks, Kenny Clark, Lucas Van Ness, Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, and Preston Smith. That entire group combined for 10 pressures and 0 sacks. It's not good enough. Missed tackles, we had 8. Kenny, Keyshawn, Carl Brooks, Kingsley Inigbare, Quay Walker, Edger, and Cooper each missed 1. Javon Bullard with 2 missed tackles on the day. Not good for him. I didn't even notice it, but I don't know. He just flies by in an instant, I guess. Stops. We got 1 for Wilson, Stokes, Nixon, McDuffie, Wyatt, Van Ness, and Bullard. 2 for Kenny Clark, Carl Brooks, and Cooper. 3 for Quay Walker. 4 for Rashawn Gary. So at least he's holding it down in the whole run defense, stopping people from doing things department. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and make excuses about what maybe he's being asked to do. My understanding is he's supposed to be attacking. I don't know. Frickin' whatever. On the coverage side, Stokes was the most targeted, 7 targets, 5 receptions for 94 yards. Didn't give up a touchdown, but that's a pretty rough day at the office. Nixon, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 70 yards, and a touchdown. That's a real rough day at the office. 154.9 when targeted. Yikes. Ballantyne, 3 targets, 2 receptions, 43 yards, and a touchdown. That's not great. McDuffie, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 28 yards, and a pass breakup. I can live with it. Bullard, 2 targets, 1 reception, 9 yards is fine. Wilson, 2 targets, 2 reception, 11 yards, and a touchdown makes that not great. Cooper, 1 target, 1 reception, 12 yards. Quay, 1 target, 1 reception, 8 yards. Xavier McKinney, 1 target, 1 pick. Oh, McKinney. Aside from that, nobody was really in coverage all that much. Evan Williams, 5 attempts in coverage with 0 targets. Not much, but it's something. Flipping over to NFL Pro. What do we got here? They have Kenny and Rashawn at the top of the stops thing. I'm not going to go through it all, but they have them with 4. 1 hustle stop on the game. That was Javon Bullard. I'm guessing that was the one behind the line of scrimmage. That was a fantastic play. QB pressure rates. Nobody even at 10%, but they do have Rashawn at the top. They have Rashawn at 9.5, Kenny 7.7, Preston 5.3, Keyshawn 3, Xavier McKinney 2.9, Quay 2.9. Actually, that's not true. If you add everybody back into this, granted, again, only 10 attempts, but TJ Slayton, 40%. Lucas Van Ness, 15.4. So those 2 are ahead of Rashawn. Looking at average time to pressure, Xavier McKinney, 2 seconds. Quay, 2.1. Keyshawn, 2.1. Preston, 2.9. Again, the fact that everybody's so high is a little upsetting because, whatever. It doesn't matter. Rashawn, 305. Carl Brooks, 320. Lucas Van Ness, 325. TJ Slayton, 325. Kenny Clark, 3.8 seconds. Kingsley Inigbare, 5.9 seconds on average before that dude gets himself a pressure. Quick pressures. How many pressures did each guy have? That was under 3 seconds. Rashawn, Keyshawn, Xavier, and Quay had 1, and that's it. Looking at their coverage statistics a little bit. Yeah, catch rate over expected. Remember, positive is negative, negative is positive. So from worst to best, Corey Ballantyne, 35.3% worse than expected. Eric Wilson, 19%. Stokes, 15.5%. Quay, 11.5%. McDuffie, 9%. Don't care about the defensive linemen who happen to be in passing lanes. And then on the positive side, Javon Bullard, negative 20.4%. Evan Williams, negative 25.6%. Xavier McKinney, negative 34.6%. Looking at EPA, again, negatives, positive, positive, negative. The worst was Eric Stokes at plus 8.8. Then Ballantyne, Keyshawn, Eric. It's about the same guys all the way down. On the positive side, Bullard, negative 0.8, Williams, negative 1.2, and Xavier McKinney, negative 5. Average separation, McDuffie, 7.5 yards. Who else do I care about here? A lot of defensive linemen. Quay Walker, 5.2 yards of separation. Bullard, 3.7. Eric Wilson, 3 yards. Stokes, 2.7. Keyshawn Nixon, 1.9. Xavier McKinney, 1.2. Evan Williams allowing just 0.9 yards of separation. Tight windows forced. Evan Williams, 100%. Keyshawn Nixon, 20%. Eric Stokes, 16.7%. Nobody else forced a tight window. Hawk percentage. What percentage did you make a play on the ball? Xavier McKinney, 100%. McDuffie, 50%. Nobody else had anything. And I think that's about it. And flip it over to special teams real quick before we get up out of here. Speaking of special teams, just came across the wire here. Brandon McManus is determined there was insufficient evidence to support a finding that violates personal conduct policy, blah, blah, blah. He's available as a free agent. Is he better? Yes, he is. Is he great? No, he's not. Doesn't matter. He's a good enough kicker that's going to make most of his kicks. It's one of those things where he's going to be like Mason. Mason missed kicks. Mason missed extra points, believe it or not. Mason made mistakes. But nobody was thinking like, dude, this Mason guy is trash. We got to do something. He's just a kicker, dude. He's just a guy that goes out and he just kicks, you know? Don't really have to think about it much. Come on, Mason, you can do it. I know sometimes you miss because you're a kicker and sometimes kickers miss, but it'd be cool if you made it because most of the time you do. That's it. That's McManus. Maybe not anymore. Maybe he's all fat. You know, he's sitting at home drinking beer, eating pizza, and he doesn't know how to kick anymore. I don't know. Bring him in. Let's find out. Now, if we're being serious, that ain't going to happen. In fact, good chance he doesn't get a job anywhere. Why? Because the investigation was a sexual assault investigation. And although there's no findings, those kind of allegations, you know, teams don't really want that. But I'm just saying, if they determine that he didn't do anything wrong, it would fix our problems. Throwing that out there. All right. On the special teams side, one bad player, Robert Rochelle. One good player, Isaiah McDuffie. This is like the old days of our special teams where there's just nothing going on except maybe one guy's okay. Our kicker, Braden Arvison, got a 36.4 PFF grade for his efforts on the day. He did make his 3 extra points, although one was barely. And our punter gets a 65.5 grade. He currently has an 83.6 PFF grade. That's a funny thing about the grading system is it's not an average. Over 4 games, he had a 69.8, 66.8, 66.6, and a 65.5. His overall grade right now is an 83.6. Some weird math thing. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Bottom line, dude's a good punter. He's doing better than the Bears punter that they drafted, which is hilarious. And I'm happy with that situation. Kicker, we got to do something. All right, folks, I'm out of here. You guys have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye-bye.